This is KAKX 89.3 FM, Mendocino High School's student-powered radio. You are up in the broadcasting booth for the junior varsity Mendocino Cardinals versus the Point Arena Pirates. Stella Kenton-Braden with the first serve from Mendo, and that is out. It will now be Point Arena's serve. Lupita Sanchez with the serve. She's getting ready. Serve is up, and it is into the net, so that is out. So currently the score is, it says 2 for the guest, but I don't know if that's correct. Georgia McClure up for the serve with Mendocino High School, and it's good, and it's over, and Point Arena Pirates fumble it. I'm now joined in the booth with Sakota Calvino.
Hello.
Georgia McClure with the second serve, and Ayana Castillo with the dig. Unfortunately, it went out and into the stands, but that means another serve for Georgia McClure on Mendocino.
Georgia McClure up with the serve. It is received by Lupita. Back over to Daisy. Georgia gets the serve over, and it is tipped over by Ozzy Okudabo.
That was a pretty cool tip back. She went behind the back and just kind of flipped it over the back. I haven't seen that yet this season. With the serve, we have Georgia McClure again. Dribbling the ball, service up, service over to number 12, Lupita Sanchez. Back over to Stella Kenton-Braden. Up and hit back by
Daisy at the attempt for the bump, but it goes into the net, and it is now in possession of number 6, a net space kick for the Point Arena Pirates.
Serves over Georgia McClure with the dig to Stella Kenton-Braden. Back to Georgia for the bump over. Lupita Sanchez with the hit back. Georgia McClure is on the ground, digs it over to Sydney, and Sydney spikes it out.
And I believe it'll be back in possession with the Pirates, and number 6 will be going for her second serve. Anid space kick with the ball. She serves it over. Georgia receives over to Stella, who sets it back to Georgia. Georgia over to Lupita, and Lupita over to Iana, and back over to Mendo. Mendo attempts to save it, but fumbles. So now we will be going on Anid's third serve for the Point Arena Pirates.
The score is 4-4 in the first game. Underhand serve over to, I believe that was Georgia McClure, to Stella Kenton-Braden, back to Georgia, over the net, received by Sunny Chavez, and
Anid went for the save, but it went over, and it is now in possession of Ella Casey for Mendocino. Ella Casey up with her first serve of the game. She comes up, and it is good, received by Anid. Anid over. It is back over to Mendo, and Lizeth attempts to save it with a tip, but it goes into the net, and now we will be having Point Arena do a serve. So we have not Ozzy Okudo. She serves it over. Stella receives over to Sydney. Sydney over to Daisy, and Daisy over to Lupita. We now have both teams huddled together, and Mendo will be going for a serve. I believe this is Liz's first serve of the game for Mendocino. Liz's goes up for the serve, and it is received by Ozzy. Ozzy over to another Point Arena player. Mendo attempts to save it with Ella Casey, but it goes up to the side of the wall in the gym, and it is in Point Arena's favor.
Point Arena's possession. That is, I believe, number 11, Nayeli. She is in possession, ready for the serve. Ball is up. Goes for the serve, but doesn't have quite enough power. It just falls short, and it is over to Sydney on Mendocino High School with the serve.
The score is currently 7-6. Mendocino up by 1. Sydney goes up for her serve, and number 6, Anid Spacek, attempts to receive it, but it goes out. Therefore, back into Mendo's possession because she touched it.
That was a very good serve. Had some good power
It
and
almost
just a
went
little bit of
out,
spin.
but
Just a little bit of spin, but they got it touched. Ball is up, over, received by Sunny Chavez, over to Georgia McClure, to Stella Kenton-Braden, up, Georgia McClure with the spike, back over to number 6, Ined Spacek, back to Georgia McClure, and she tipped it back over.
So we're going to be having, I believe this is going to be Sydney's third serve. She's a pretty good server. Mendo up by 3, 9-6. She goes up for her third serve. It is received by Anid. Anid back over. Georgia to Stella to another Mendo player. Back over and received by Point Arena. Point Arena gets a nice little tip right in the zone where Mendo falls short. And it is back into Point Arena's possession. We're going to be having Ayana Castillo in for the serve. She passes it in, and Mendo falls short yet again, and it will be going back for Ayana Castillo.
It is Point Arena with the serve, number 9. Oh, no, I'm sorry, that is number 3, Ayana, over the net to Stella, Stella to Georgia McClure, back to Stella, and Georgia with the tip over. Sydney back to Georgia, and that's over into the net and down. That'll be a point for Point Arena. Coach Laviva from Mendocino High School is calling a timeout. The current score is 9-9. It's been a pretty good game so far. There's definitely been some good plays.
Yeah, I've seen it's pretty equal out on the court right now, as you can see by the score 9-9. With only 37 seconds left in the timeout, it's hard to tell who could come on top for the first game.
Yeah, I'm honestly, I couldn't say who. I couldn't say who because it's so far they both look like super strong teams, and they definitely both have their strengths and weaknesses. But I think they're pretty
in
equally.
The past game, for Point Arena's home game, it came pretty close, and they ended up coming out on top. But they went all the way for the 3 games. So it definitely needed a tiebreaker. So I can see some similar action going to be happening for these games.
Number 3, Ayana Castillo, over to Lizeth, back over to Ayana Castillo, and it hits the net. That's down, and a point for Mendocino.
We're going to be having Stella Kenton-Braden up for her first serve of the game.
Daisy Kennedy is coming in. There was a sub off, and she is taking the serve.
Daisy up for her first serve, and it is over. Attempted to be received by Ozzy Okudahau, but it is not.
Good serve, had some power behind it, and she will be going up for her second serve. Serve is up, over the net, nice clean serve. That looked like it, Nayeli, she looked like that had some sort of weird spin on it because it came right off her hands, right into her face. Daisy Kennedy with her third serve, goes over. She is hammering Nayeli. Nayeli over to Ozzy. Ozzy fumbles it, and it is a point for Mendo, 13-9. Daisy Kennedy with her 4th serve, I believe. Ball goes up, over. Received by Lupita Sanchez, over to Stella. Stella to Georgia. Georgia back to Stella with the set over. Ozzy over to Lupita Sanchez, over to Mendo, and it went out. So Daisy Kennedy with her 5th serve, 14-9. Ball's up. Oh, it's gonna fall just short. That's okay though. She had 5 points in. 5 points in her little serving run. Number 2, Sunny Chavez from Point Arena Pirates with the serve. She's getting ready.
Sunny has been a pretty strong player for the Point Arena Pirates this game.
Balls.
Hello, and if you are just tuning in for the radio, you're listening to KKX 89.3 FM, Mendocino, California, student-powered radio. We are currently at 15-10. Mendocino 5 points in the lead against the Point Arena Pirates.
We have Stella Braden up with the serve. Serve is over, received by Ozzy Okubo. Back to Enid Spacek. Back over to Stella. Stella back over to number 9, Ozzy Okubo. Over from Lizbeth. And that is a point for Mendo. It was an out on Point Arena. We're having a sub. Number 5, Emily in for, I believe that's number 11, Nayeli.
Okay, so right now we have Sunny Chavez making it over. Daisy attempt for the save for Mendocino, but it goes into the net, and it is another point for Point Arena. Currently 15-12, Mendocino in the lead by only 3 points. We have Lupita up for her 2nd serve. Daisy, again, goes in for the save because these are some hard serves. She's having to dig pretty intensely, and it goes out again, and we're gonna have Lupita go in for her 3rd serve. She goes in, Sydney receives, over to Stella, and then set over the net by Georgia. Back over to Point Arena, back over to Mendo, and it is tipped almost perfectly by Enid Spacek, and yet another point for Point Arena?
Yes.
Yes, so we're gonna be having 15-14, Mendocino only in the lead by 1 point.
Lupita Sanchez up for another serve, and that is out. So that will end her run of serves, and now the serves will be Georgia McClures from Mendocino High School. She's getting ready for the serve. Serve is up. Serve is good. Received by Sunny Chavez. Back over to Sydney. Sydney makes the point on the Point Arena Pirates, and that totals up for the score to be 17-14.
Georgia up for her 2nd serve, and it is good. Attempted to be gotten by Sunny. It ends up going over. Georgia with another hit. Back over to Stella. Stella lobs it over. Received by Point Arena. Over, back over to Ella Casey on Mendocino. And attempted to be tipped by Sydney Blagg on the Mendocino team. But it goes into the net, and Point Arena gets the point. 17-15, Mendocino in the lead by 2 points.
Number 6, Enid Spacek. Underhand serves right over, nice and easy. Dug by Georgia McClure. Over to Stella, over back to Georgia. Received by Lupita. Over, and it is sent out. Another point for Mendo. Just a little too much power on that overshot.
Yeah, she had a pretty good streak going there. She had almost like 6 serves, I believe, in a row. We're going to be having Ella Casey for the Mendocino team serving her 1st serve. And it is over. received by Anid. Anid over to one of her teammates, and it goes into the net when they attempt to set it for the other player. Ella Casey will be going in for her second serve, and Mendocino gains the point.
Ella Casey getting ready. Ball is up. Ball is clean. Oh, it's a little too far, and that will be a point for Point Arena.
It was just a hair out. It easily could have been received, but I think it was a pretty easy point for Point Arena to call it out. We have Aussie coming in for the serve, received by Mendo back over, and now Stella up with the set for Georgia. Sydney hits it over, back over to Point Arena. Point Arena back over to Georgia in the back row there, back over to Stella, and lobbed over by Sydney Blagg. So we got the point for Mendo, 20-16. Mendocino ahead by only 4 points.
Lizeth is taking the serve. Ball's up. Over, clear to Aussie. Aussie goes for the tip over, but it is met by Sydney, who tips it right back. Little bit of fumbling around, back and forth, but it comes out on Mendo's ball. Stella up, and Daisy goes for the spike, but she wasn't quite under it enough, and it was just a little too high and knocked it into the net. That'll be a point for Point Arena.
So now we're going to be having Niella up for the serve.
Ball's up over Georgia McClure with the dig. Sydney with the set, and Stella goes for a dive and tries to get it back, but unfortunately she was under the net and it dropped the ball right back down.
Nielli back up with her second serve.
Ball goes over. Daisy Kennedy with the receive over to Stella. Stella shoots it over the net to Nayeli. Nayeli to Sunny Chavez. Sunny Chavez over to Georgia McClure. Georgia McClure to Stella. Stella to Sydney, and Sydney hits it out, I believe. It was just about a foot or two outside the back line.
Nayeli up with her third serve. And the ball is up, received by Daisy, back over to Ayana. Ayana over, Georgia with the receiving end, Stella over to Sydney. Sydney with a nice little hit, received by Point Arena, back over to Mendo. Daisy to Stella, and then hit by Sydney, received by the back row, Point Arena, back up to our top row up in Mendocino, and Sydney goes in for the tip, and it is called in Mendocino's favor. We're going to be having Sydney Blagg coming up back into the back row for her first serve.
Ball is up. Clean over. Hits the ground right in this hole. Enid was just a little behind it and was not able to receive it right on the floor in front of her. Up for her second serve, Sydney. Over, little too much power on that, and it was out in the back. This will be Point Arena's serve. Number 3, Ayana Castillo. Underhand serve, over, received by Sydney, over to Stella. Stella to Georgia. Georgia with a very powerful hit right back.
There was no way Ayana could have received that.
Nope.
Her team seems to be giving her a little pat on the back, but definitely that was a hard ball for the receiving end. Daisy coming up for a serve, received by Ayana. Ayana over to Sunny. Sunny back over. Georgia to Stella, and Stella goes in for a nice little side tip, and it goes into the net. Point Arena in favor.
23 Mendocino and 21 Point Arena. Number 2, Sunny Chavez over to Daisy Kennedy. Daisy Kennedy to Georgia McClure. Aussie over to Sydney. Sydney over to Ayana Castillo. And back over to Stella. Stella to Georgia. Georgia to Lapita Chavez. Lapita Chavez over to Aussie, and Aussie was able to get it right down in front of Stella. It's another point for Point Arena.
It is definitely getting a little bit close here, 23 to 22, with the match being capped at 25. This is definitely keeping the audience on the edge of their seats. We have Sunny in with her serve, received by Mendo. Georgia with her nice little hit over to Ayana. Ayana over to Sunny. Sunny back over to Ayana. Ayana over. Georgia receives over to Stella. And then Georgia with the nice tip right in the spot that they don't expect it, bringing the score 24 to 22. Mendo just 1 point away from the first game being over.
Stella Kenton-Braden with the serve. If this serve is in, that is a game won. It's in. Ozzy Okubo gets it back over to Ella Casey. Ella Casey to number 6, Ned Spacek. Over to Georgia. Georgia over to Nayeli. Nayeli back over to Georgia. Georgia to Stella. Georgia goes with the tip. Great tip right down in front of her. So we have
the first game wrapping up. Mendocino won the first one. If you're just now tuning in, hello, welcome. This is Sakota Calvino and Hardy Beek broadcasting the JV game, Mendocino versus Point Arena. So if you're around town, please come in and you can support it right here in the Mendocino High School gym. We'll be having a varsity game later on, and we'll be joined by Stella Kenton-Braden, who is on the JV team. So she will also be coming off the court to give us her intake on the varsity volleyball games. So that's going to be exciting. So if you plan on being in the Mendocino area later in the day, then you can also come to the varsity game. These games are definitely going to be pretty close, although last time Point Arena lost to our varsity but won to our JV. It's definitely unknown if we're going to be having yep, we're just having 1 more minute and 45 seconds in between the games. The crowd is looking pretty, not gonna lie, pretty dry right now. So if you're around, come on and visit. And the student section could definitely use a little bit more support, but we do have a lot of parents out there and a lot of our lower classmen high schoolers coming to support their peers playing the volleyball game.
1 minute and 15 seconds left in between games. The teams are switching sides, and the coaches are having some words with the players. I think these are 2 very close games. There was definitely some good plays by both Point Arena Pirates and Mendocino Cardinals. I think this will be a close second game. Both teams are tiring. I think both teams are about the same size.
Yeah, I'd say they're both pretty small teams. We have MSP taking a nice little pick.
Make sure to go visit KKX on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. And
yeah,
you can
definitely support our social media because we post a lot on there about what's happening in the Mendocino High School PAMA and KKX activities, which is really important if you have a student at our school or if you're a student yourself and you want to check out what's going on, maybe if you're interested in joining the program. We have Radio Club every Monday, so even if you aren't in a Marshall Brown multimedia class, you can come by and make some content for our student-powered radio station here on 89.3 FM.
There's the buzzer notifying the teams that it is time to commence the second game Point Arena Pirates sending their starting players out.
And as you can hear,
Stella leading the junior varsity Cardinals in a little cheer, and they go out and take their places on the court. number 12, Lupita Sanchez with the first serve.
Yep, so we're leading off 0-0 in our second game. As always, you know how these volleyball games go. Start out at 0-0 and make it to 25 first.
That's, I believe, most
That is
sporting events
So if
you
you're
start at
unfamiliar
0.
with the sport of volleyball, that is what's happening. Lupita up with the first serve, received by Daisy over to Stella, over to Georgia, who lobs it on over to Pointerina. Pointerina back received by Sydney Black, over to Stella, over to Georgia, who hits them in a really nice spot, but it looks like Aussie tried to get it over as well, but there
I
was a
believe she
line
hit
violation.
Yeah, I believe it
I
was a
believe
line
her
violation.
foot went under the net, just under onto the black line, which automatically gives it in the opposing team's favor. So now we have Stella Kenton-Braden starting off the serve for the Mendocino team. And it has a lot of power and potential, but it goes straight into the middle of the net.
It was a little low.
It was a little low. I think, you know, we're starting off the second game. It's pretty routine, but I think she got a little too comfortable with her serve, but had a lot of power. So
number 6, Ned Spacek over the net to Lizeth. Lizeth to Stella Kenton-Braden. Stella over to Georgia, and Georgia makes the point on the Pointerina Pirates. 2-1, Mendocino in the lead. You're listening to KKX 89.3 FM, Mendocino High School's student-powered radio. This is a live broadcast of the junior varsity Pointerina Pirates versus Mendocino Cardinals junior varsity volleyball game.
Georgia off with a similar serve to Stella's. A lot of power, a lot of potential, but goes straight into the net, giving Pointerina that second point to tie us up with them. So now we have Aussie taking it off with the serve. Pretty high serve, but Georgia receives it over to Stella and tipped over by Sydney. Back over to Mendo, back over to Pointerina, and lobbed over by Ayana. Ayana over to Georgia. Georgia over to Stella, and Stella over to Sydney. Right in that sweet spot, they get on Aussie, and Aussie falls to the ground, and the ball is in Mendocino's favor. So we're going to be having, I believe,
sorry, Pointerina was playing it pretty safe with that last serve. They were shooting high, but the high serves are usually pretty safe. They're a little easier for the team to dig, but.
And if you're just tuning in, you're listening to KKX 89.3 FM, Mendocino, California, student-powered radio. This is Dakota Calvino and Hardy Beek broadcasting the JV volleyball game, Mendocino versus Pointerina Pirates.
Score is 3-2, or 4-2, I'm sorry. Another point was just made. Mendocino High School's in the lead, and Ella Casey up with the serve. This is her second serve.
Yes. She goes up, but she lets the ball fall. She's going to do a reserve.
Falls
she
up.
Throws it up.
Over. And it is out. It's out, which gives Pointerina the serve.
Yep, so we're going to be having Nayeli up with the serve. And she goes up and serves it over. Ella Casey receives over to Sydney. Sydney set up to Georgia. Lobs it right on over to Pointerina. Ayana over and back over to Daisy. Daisy over, back over to Pointerina. And it was Ayana who got it back over. Stella with another tip. This game goes fast, guys. You should see it. Daisy over to Stella. Stella over to Sydney. Sydney over with a nice tip, and it is out, called by the Pointerina Pirates. 5-3. Mendocino in the lead by only 2.
And if you want to watch the game, as Dakota was saying, you can watch the live stream on youtube.com / I believe, Mendocino Multimedia.
So go and check out our other content on that, because we have a lot of past games. So if you're wanting to catch up with some of the athletics, you can. We broadcast soccer games and volleyball games, and soon we'll be doing basketball in the winter. So stay tuned for all of that fun stuff on our social media. Right now the game is at 5-3. Mendocino in the lead by 2. We have Daisy back over to Point Arena, over to Ella Casey, over to Stella, and hit by Daisy. Over to Ayana, over to Ozzy, Ozzy over to Georgia, receiving on Mendocino, over to Stella, and back over to Sydney with the attempt at a hit, but it goes into the net, and it is in favor of Point Arena. We'll be having Ayana Castillo serve.
She's readying up for the serve. Underhand serve over, nice and easy, received by Daisy. Daisy to Stella, back to Daisy with a powerful hit over, received by Ozzy, but unfortunately her receive was a little off and it hit the net and bounced out.
We're going to be having Sydney Blagg serve it for the Mendocino team. Sydney Blagg bouncing the ball, and she's going to throw it up. And over, received by Lupita. Lupita over to Ozzy, who gets it over to Sydney. Sydney over to Stella, who sets it up for Georgia. Georgia in with a nice hit, but it bounces off of the net and back at her, and she cannot receive it. It is now back into Point Arena's possession. We're going to be having Sunny Chavez with the serve.
She's readying up, ball's in the air, over, received by Ella Casey. Sydney runs out and still gets it.
Lizeth with that attempt at a just far lob. I don't think they were expecting much because it was kind of one of those last resort type of situations.
Very much so.
Sunny Chavez up with her second serve, received by Lizeth. Lizeth over to Georgia. Georgia tips it, and it was received by Anid, but Anid tried to pass it over to one of her teammates, and they could not receive it, and it kind of rolled off the net, I would say. Daisy up with the serve for the Mendocino team, 7-6. Mendocino only up by 1 point. She gets it over, received by Lupita. Lupita over to Sydney in the back row for Mendocino, over to Stella, over to Georgia, and attempted to be received by Nayela, but she falls to the ground attempting to receive it, and it is out.
She was going for a one-hand save, but didn't quite make it. Daisy Kennedy with another serve. Ball's up, over, and it was in. Point Arena's players thought it was going to be out, but it turned out it was actually in, and that's a point for Mendo.
And we have Daisy up with a serve, and it is out. It looks like she just misaimed. She had a lot of power with that one. It's a pretty high up serve, but it was not quite in the right direction. We're going to be having Lupita Sanchez come up for the serve for the Point Arena Pirates. She goes up, received by Sydney. Sydney over to Georgia. Georgia basically just hitting at it on the net for a second there. She was definitely had no hope of actually getting it over. I think it was kind of like a missed opportunity type situation.
Lupita Sanchez with the serve back to Sydney. Sydney to Daisy. Daisy to Georgia. Georgia over back to Lupita. Lupita to Sunny Chavez. Chavez over to Georgia. Georgia back over to Lupita. Lupita to Enid. Enid to Sunny Chavez. Chavez over to Georgia. Georgia to Stella. Back to Georgia. Ball is over and ball is good. Mendocino with the point.
It is currently 10-8. Mendocino in the lead by 2 points, and we're going to be having a Mendocino player start off with the serve, Stella Kenton-Braden. She comes up, and she serves it over, received by Nayela. Nayela does a far back pass, and it goes right out, and Mendocino is in favor. Stella Kenton-Braden up with her second serve for the Mendocino team. Mendocino leading by 3. She hits it up, and it was out, called by the Point Arena Pirates, and Mendocino will be, well, it looks like actually Point Arena will be in favor for this time since it was out, and it looks like Enid will be serving. She serves over to Lizeth. Lizeth over to Stella, who sets it up to Georgia. Georgia back over to Nayela. Nayela back over for a powerful hit. Stella over to Georgia. Georgia over with a hit over. It looks like it was attempted to be received by Point Arena, but it fumbled, and it will now be back into possession of Point Arena since the ref called it in their favor. So we will be having Sunny Chavez. Oh, we'll be having Anid serve it over. Lizeth looked like she was confused on who was going to hit it, but in all of that kind of
Conundrum.
yeah, kind of a conundrum. They kind of sat there all like the problem where you don't say mine type of situation. So we now have it back into Point Arena's possession for her third serves. Anid's Lizeth receives it this time over to Stella, and with a powerful hit by Georgia, a little bit too powerful, and it goes out.
Is a timeout called? Did you see who that was called by?
I believe that was called for a full minute from Point Arena.
Point Arena's coach calling for a timeout. I think that was a pretty rightful timeout. They are.
Or that actually was, I believe that might have been Mendocino because they just passed us up by one. So this could definitely be a good opportunity for Mendocino's coach, Laviva Dakers, to, check in and make sure we keep a lead, because if we win this game, we win it because it's best 2 out of 3 for JV teams. So this is definitely a make it or break it situation, or else we'll be forced to go and play a tiebreaker if Point Arena wins, which is very possible because I think there's a lot of hard work out on the court right now. I believe both teams are playing pretty good.
Both teams are definitely giving it all they got.
And you can tell with the mistakes that each team is making, it's mutual, like serving or hitting things out or not calling the ball. I think it's a very similar problem within all of the teams.
Yeah.
So we have Anid going up for her serve, resuming the game, over to Lizeth. Lizeth over to Stella. Stella over to Georgia. Georgia lobs it over to Sunny Chavez. Sunny Chavez back over to Mendocino. Stella over to Georgia. Georgia over with the hit to the back row to Sunny Chavez. Back over and tipped over by Aussie, but the ref called it before the play ended, and it is Mendocino's team. I believe that could have been either a line violation. So now we have Georgia McClure up for the serve, and it is out.
A little too much power on that one.
Definitely, I have seen worse problems in the past where it's not enough power, but these girls are definitely coming at it with their all.
I think it's a pretty exciting game for them, so I think their adrenaline's kind of kicking in, and they might be putting a little more muscle into it than they are,
Definitely, we got a lot of transfers from Point Arena in this past year, so it could definitely rile up some mixed feelings about the game. Especially the varsity game. I know that's going to be a little bit more of a scene because we definitely have some rivalries going on between schools. Not really, it's all fun and games, but we don't know. We don't know. We have a lot of their players out in the court for
Ella
ourselves.
Casey with the serve, up and over, received by Lupita Sanchez, back to Georgia McClure. Georgia McClure to Stella. Stella to Sydney. Sydney over to number 3, Ayana, and that is a point for Point Arena.
Okay, so now we're going to be having Nayela up for the serve. Nayeli up for the serve, and it is out. See, similar problems now, tying it up for Mendocino, 14-14. Mendocino gained the point. Tied. Lizeth up for the serve. And Lizeth is up. Over, received by Sunny Chavez. Over to Ayana. Ayana back over to Sunny. And back over to Mendocino. Georgia in with the desperate save. And Daisy in for that close second. But they did 4 touches, so it is called in Point Arena's favor.
4 touches is all you get in this sport. You don't get much more.
You don't get much more than 3. Hardy beat.
Okay, 3 touches is all you get in the.
So we have Ayana up for the serve for Point Arena. Georgia receives over to Sydney. Sydney over to Stella. Stella in for a very close bump. She bumps it right over the net to where it kind of curves in on them, and they didn't really have much of a choice to botch it.
Games,
so now we have
games tied at 15, both teams. Sydney with the serve. Sydney over to Ozzy. Ozzy to Nayeli. Nayeli to Sunny Chavez, and it is Point Arena's out, which is making the score 16 to 15.
definitely a lot of potential for both teams to win. I could see either of them coming up with this. Sydney over to Point Arena back over to Georgia. Georgia over to, it's a sibling thing. Georgia back over to Stella. Stella back over to Georgia. And then it goes over to Point Arena and it is out. Or it is very much in because they gained the point.
Sydney's on a roll with some pretty powerful serves. This is her 3rd or 4th serve, I believe. Ball goes up, over. Looks like I spoke too soon. It was out of the corner, hitting the back wall of the gymnasium, which is making it so it is Point Arena's serve. Sunny Chavez with the serve over into the net. That will be a turnover and a point for Mendocino High School. Scores 18 to 16.
If you would like to request a song or dedication, shoot us an email at request@kkx.org or text us 707-397-0377. You can do this 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on our radio station. Right now we are doing a volleyball broadcast, so it will not be necessary, but always if you have a song in mind you want us to play that is air-friendly, please shoot us an email. And don't forget we're on social media. You can follow us on Instagram and Twitter with the handle KKX893. Like us on Facebook at facebook.com/KKXFM. And you can subscribe to our YouTube channels by heading over to kkx.org/stream.
This is Hardy Beak and Sakota Calvino with the live broadcast of the junior varsity Point Arena Pirates versus Mendocino High School Cardinals. Score is 20 to 17 in favor of the Mendocino Cardinals. Stella Braden with the serve. Ball is up. Unfortunately, that's falling short by a couple feet, and it is a point for the guest team, Mendocino.
So now we will be having Enid Spacek up with the serve, received by Ella Casey. Over to Stella. Stella over. Daisy with a back row hit. Over to Lupita. Lupita over to Nayela. Over to Mendocino. Stella up with the set for Georgia. Received by Nayela again. And attempted to be saved by Ozzy, but it is out. And the ref calls it before the play is over. Georgia starting up with a serve for Mendocino, 21 to 18, 4 points away from game.
Georgia with a nice low serve, skimming the top of the net, and it bounced off the tips of some Point Arena players, which is a point for the home team. So 22 to 18.
We just had Point Arena Pirates call a full 1 minute timeout. I believe it is because they were so close coming up this entire game, and they let it slip a little bit with a good server, and they are now 4 points behind, which wouldn't be a lot if it wasn't only 3 points from game for Mendocino.
Honestly, I think Point Arena could have a comeback, or Mendo could hold them. It's totally up in the air.
At this point, I feel like all you really need to win the game is get a lead like this, and I believe that Mendocino will probably likely come out on top, only because they're pretty even play-wise. So since they got this lead, it's kind of that good lead that can get you at the end of the game here for both teams.
Let's hope you're right.
Let's hope we're
knock on some wood. I really want Mendo to come out with the victory on
Georgia
this.
with the serve, received by Lupita. Lupita over. Oh, and before the play is over, it looks like the ref just calls it in Mendocino's side. I believe
It was called because it hit the roof of the gymnasium, which is considered a dead ball.
dead ball. It is. So 23 to 18. Georgia over with another serve, received by Nyela. Nyela over back to Mendocino. Stella with the lob over. We have Sony Chavez in the back with a serve over, but it's attempted to be saved by Ayana, but it just falls short on their side of the net. 24 to 18. Looks like Mendocino is going to come out on top for this one. It's the second game.
This is game point. All Mendo needs is one more point. George McClure with the serve into the
Ooh.
net. I'm really hoping you didn't just jinx us there, Sakota.
I might have. Might have.
Please
We
take
don't
that
know.
back.
We don't know, but we're going to be having Aussie up for the serve. She comes up, and a nice, healthy serve over to Georgia. Georgia over to Stella. Stella over to Sydney. Sydney in with a nice hit, but
No, that was in.
that was it. That was in, and it is 25 to 19 was the ending score. Mendocino with game.
That is a win from